John Neely Kennedy's wife was kicked out by a liberal manager. Next day, his Rolls-Royce arrived. Rebecca Kennedy, the poised and resolute wife of Louisiana's outspoken conservative Senator John Neely Kennedy, stepped through the glass doors of Premier Elite Motors, a high-end car dealership nestled in the heart of Washington, D.C.'s glittering political district. The showroom gleamed under a canopy of LED lights, each beam bouncing off the polished surfaces of luxury vehicles, a silver Porsche Panamera, with sleek curves, a deep green Bentley Flying Spur, exuding understated power, and a crimson Ferrari Portofino perched on a pedestal like a piece of modern art. The air carried the faint aroma of new leather and high-end cologne, a sensory reminder of the wealth and status that defined this space. Rebecca, at 45, carried herself with a quiet elegance that belied her fierce determination. Her navy blazer, crisp white blouse, and tailored black slacks spoke of professionalism, while a small, bald eagle pendant hanging delicately around her neck signaled her unapologetic conservative values. She wasn't here for vanity. She needed a car, a Paragon V12 sedan priced at $275,000 with its obsidian black finish and twin-turbo engine to serve as a reliable and commanding vehicle for her tireless work with veterans' charities across the region. The Paragon wasn't just a car. It was a statement of resilience, a way to navigate the demanding world of D.C. politics and charity events while standing firm against the liberal media that often targeted her husband's fiery rhetoric. As her heels clicked softly on the marble floor, the faint chime of the glass doors announced her arrival, though the showroom's buzz of low conversations and soft jazz from overhead speakers barely faltered. Rebecca's green eyes scanned the space, locking onto the Paragon V12, its sleek lines and imposing presence drawing her like a beacon. She approached it, her posture confident, her phone tucked neatly into her blazer pocket, ready to negotiate. A young salesman, Ethan, barely 23, and sporting a slightly askew tie, noticed her first. His nervous smile betrayed his inexperience, but his voice was earnest as he stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am, can I help you?" he asked, his hands fidgeting with a brochure. Rebecca turned her expression warm but direct. "I'd like to see the Paragon V12, she said, gesturing toward the sedan. "I'm interested in its features and financing options." Ethan nodded eagerly, launching into a description of the car's twin-turbo V12 engine, its hand-stitched leather interior, and its advanced navigation system tailored for the fast-paced lives of DC's elite. "It's got 600 horsepower, perfect for," he began, but a sharp voice cut through his words like a knife. "I'll handle this, Ethan." Michael Carter, the sales manager, emerged from behind a glossy black Bentley, his presence commanding the room. At 42, Michael was tall and broad-shouldered, his navy suit tailored to perfection, his dark hair slicked back with a sheen that matched the cars around him. His eyes, however, carried a glint of arrogance as they swept over Rebecca, lingering on her eagle pendant with a flicker of disdain that was impossible to miss. Ethan stepped back, his face flushing, clearly intimidated by his boss's sudden intervention. Michael adjusted his tie, his smile thin and laced with condescension. "You're here for the Paragon V12, he asked, his tone dripping with false politeness, as if questioning her right to even stand in the showroom. Rebecca met his gaze unflinching. "Yes, I'd like to see the interior and discuss terms," she replied, her voice calm but firm, honed from years of standing beside John Neely Kennedy through countless political battles. Michael's smile tightened, his eyes narrowing as he tilted his head, studying her. "Wait a second. You look familiar." He paused, then his lips curled into a smirk as recognition dawned. "You're Rebecca Kennedy, aren't you? Senator Kennedy's wife? The one who stands by him while he spouts off about woke nonsense on TV." His voice carried a mocking edge. The word senator laced with contempt, as if it were a punchline. The showroom grew quieter, a few customers near the Porsche glancing over their curiosity piqued. Rebecca nodded, her expression unshaken. "That's right. I need this car for my charity work, visiting veterans' homes and organizing fundraisers. Can we focus on the Paragon?" Michael let out a harsh chuckle, the sound reverberating off the glass walls, drawing more eyes. "Charity work," he said, his voice rising just enough to ensure others heard. "You mean driving around to rally your husband's conservative base? I've seen you on those news clips, always by his side, waving that flag of, what do you call it? Traditional values." He stepped closer, crossing his arms, his posture radiating superiority. "This is Premier Elite Motors. We cater to clients with a certain progressive sensibility. Not sure you fit the vibe here." The words landed like a slap, and Rebecca's jaw tightened, though her composure held firm. "I'm a customer," she said, her voice steady, each word deliberate. "I have money to spend, and I want the Paragon V12. My politics or my husband's shouldn't matter." Michael's smirk widened, and he turned to Ethan, who stood frozen nearby, clutching his brochure like a lifeline. "Hear that, Ethan? She thinks her conservative cash is good enough for us." Ethan lowered his eyes, clearly uncomfortable, while a couple near the Ferrari whispered to each other, one muttering, "Isn't that Kennedy's wife?" Another salesperson, a woman with sharp red lipstick, stifled a giggle, feeding Michael's bravado. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a patronizing tone. "Look, Mrs. Kennedy, I don't know who funds your husband's campaigns, oil barons maybe, but we don't need your kind tainting our brand. This isn't a place for eagle pendants and MAGA rallies." He gestured vaguely at her necklace, his sneer unmistakable. The showroom was now a stage with customers and staff watching the exchange like spectators at a tense drama. An older man in a gray coat near the Bentley frowned, murmuring to his wife, "That's not right. She just wants a car." His wife nodded, but others weren't so sympathetic. A young couple by the Porsche exchanged amused glances, as if enjoying the spectacle. Rebecca stood taller, her green eyes flashing with a quiet fire. "You're refusing to serve me because of my beliefs?" she asked, her tone sharpening, but still controlled a skill honed from years of navigating hostile political arenas. "That's not just unprofessional, it's illegal." Michael shrugged, unfazed, his arms still crossed. "This is a private business," he said, his voice cold. "I decide who we serve. And frankly, you don't belong here. Why don't you try a dealership that sells pickups? Might suit your aesthetic better." His words drew a few chuckles from the corner, but the older man in the gray coat shook his head, muttering, "This is ridiculous." Rebecca took a deep breath, her hand brushing her eagle pendant as if grounding herself. "I'm not here to argue politics," she said, her voice low but resonant, cutting through the showroom's tension. "I'm here to buy a car for my work, which helps veterans and their families. You're refusing a paying customer because you don't like my husband's politics. That's your choice, but it's a mistake." Michael stepped closer, his face inches from hers, his breath tinged with the faint scent of espresso. "Mistake," he scoffed, pointing to the glass doors. "The mistake is you thinking you can waltz in here with that pendant and expect us to roll out the red carpet. This is my showroom, my rules. You don't belong here. Please leave, or I'll call security." The threat hung in the air, and the showroom fell nearly silent save for the soft hum of the jazz overhead. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the floor, while the couple near the Ferrari whispered, "She's Senator Kennedy's wife. He's really doing this." The older woman in the gray coat's frown deepened, but no one spoke up. Rebecca held Michael's gaze, her expression a blend of defiance and calm. She knew she could escalate this call, a lawyer alert conservative media, or let John handle it. But now wasn't the time. "Fine," she said, her voice clear and steady, ringing like a warning bell. "I'll leave. But this isn't over." She turned her heels, clicking deliberately on the marble as she headed for the glass doors. Michael laughed behind her, loud and triumphant. "Say hi to the senator for me," he called, his voice dripping with mockery. "Maybe try an SUV next time, more your speed." A few more laughs echoed from the corner, but Ethan muttered under his breath, "This isn't right." Rebecca pushed through the doors, sunlight spilling over her as she stepped outside, her silhouette small but unyielding. She reached her gray Honda Accord, its paint faded from years of reliable service, and slid into the driver's seat. Michael's words replayed in her mind. "You don't belong here." But they didn't break her. Instead, they ignited a quiet resolve. She pulled out her phone and dialed John, the line ringing once before his familiar southern drawl answered. "Rebecca." "You all right, darlin'?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. She exhaled, her grip tightening on the wheel. "John, I was just kicked out of a dealership. The manager, Michael Carter, refused to sell me a car because I'm your wife. He mocked our values, humiliated me in front of everyone." John went silent for a moment, and she could almost see his sharp blue eyes narrowing, his jaw clenching. At 73, John Neely Kennedy had risen from a small-town Louisiana lawyer to a U.S. senator, a man who'd faced down opponents with wit and grit. Insulting his wife was a line no one crossed lightly. "Kicked you out." John's voice dropped, a dangerous edge creeping in. "Who does this fella think he is, treating my wife like that?" Rebecca recounted the encounter, from Michael's sneer at her pendant to his public dismissal. "I wanted the Paragon V12 for my charity work, to visit veterans' homes. He said I didn't fit their progressive image, told me to leave, or he'd call security." John let out a sharp breath, the sound crackling through the phone. "He insulted you, my wife, and our values. Oh, he's gonna regret that." "Where's this dealership?" Rebecca gave him the address, sensing the fire in his tone. "John, don't do anything rash," she warned, though she knew her husband's protective streak ran deep. "Rash?" He chuckled, a mischievous glint in his voice. "I'm just gonna pay him a visit tomorrow, darlin'. You head home and rest. I'll take care of this." As Rebecca started the Honda's engine, the hum steady and familiar, she drove toward their Georgetown townhouse, the D.C. skyline fading in her rear view. She touched her eagle pendant, a faint smile crossing her lips. Michael Carter thought he'd won, thought he'd put another conservative in their place. But he didn't know John Neely Kennedy, and he had no idea what was coming tomorrow. If you were gripped by Rebecca Kennedy's story of standing firm against bias at Premier Elite Motors, consider supporting our channel. Your donations help us bring you more inspiring tales of resilience, respect, and real people overcoming division. Every contribution, big or small, keeps these stories alive and fuels our mission to spark meaningful conversations. Click the link below to donate and join our community. Let's keep telling stories that matter. The morning sun bathed Washington, D.C. in a golden glow, its rays bouncing off the sleek glass facade of Premier Elite Motors, where luxury cars gleamed like trophies under the showroom's LED lights. A low, commanding rumble shattered the morning calm, drawing eyes from every corner of the street. A silver Rolls-Royce Phantom, worth $1.7 million, rolled to a stop at the dealership's entrance, its bespoke chrome accents sparkling like polished armor. The car's presence was magnetic, its elegant lines and imposing grille commanding attention from passers-by, who paused, phones in hand, snapping photos, and whispering, Who's that? That's no ordinary ride. The Rolls-Royce wasn't just a vehicle. It was a statement. Its silver hue a subtle nod to the unyielding resolve of its owner, Senator John Neely Kennedy. Inside the showroom, Michael Carter, the sales manager, stood near a crimson Ferrari Portofino, his navy suit crisp, his tie perfectly knotted. He was mid-conversation with a wealthy client, his smug grin still intact from yesterday's triumph over Rebecca Kennedy. To Michael, refusing her service had been a victory, a way to assert his progressive ideals over what he saw as backward conservative values. He thought he'd sent a clear message. This was his turf, and people like Rebecca didn't belong. The Rolls-Royce's heavy door opened with a soft thud, and John Neely Kennedy stepped out, his presence as commanding as the car behind him. At 73, the Louisiana senator was tall and lean, his silver hair neatly combed, his dark gray suit tailored to perfection. His sharp blue eyes, honed from years of political battles, scanned the dealership with a calm intensity that belied the fire within. John wasn't here just to buy a car. He was here to right a wrong, to confront the man who'd dared to humiliate his wife. The crowd outside grew their murmurs a low hum as John strode toward the glass doors, his polished shoes clicking with purpose. The showroom's chime rang as he entered, but it was drowned out by the sudden hush that fell over the space. Customers paused mid-sentence, salespeople froze, and all eyes locked onto the senator whose reputation for sharp wit and unrelenting resolve preceded him. Michael turned, his smile faltering as he caught sight of John the Rolls-Royce, looming like a silver specter through the glass behind him. Clearing his throat, Michael stepped forward, forcing a veneer of confidence. "Good morning, sir," he said, his voice smooth, but tinged with unease. "I'm Michael Carter, sales manager. How can I assist you today?" His eyes flicked nervously to the phantom outside its presence, a silent challenge to his authority. John stopped a few feet from Michael, his gaze piercing, sizing him up from head to toe. His southern drawl cut through the silence like a blade, slow and deliberate. "I'm John Neely Kennedy, senator from Louisiana. And you, Mr. Carter, insulted my wife Rebecca yesterday, refused to sell her a car 'cause she's with me, mocked her for our conservative values, and kicked her out like she was nothing. I'm here to fix that." The words landed like a thunderclap, and the showroom's atmosphere shifted instantly. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A woman in a pearl necklace near the Bentley gasped, murmuring to her husband, "That's Senator Kennedy. This is about his wife." Her husband nodded, his eyes wide. "This is gonna be something." Michael blinked, his mouth twitching as he struggled to maintain his composure. His hands adjusted his tie, a nervous tick betraying his confidence. "Senator Kennedy," he said, his smile strained. "I'm terribly sorry if there was a misunderstanding. We didn't refuse anyone. We just—" John raised a hand, cutting him off, his voice sharp but controlled. "Don't play games with me, son. You mocked her. Eagle pendant, called her unfit for your fancy showroom, told her she didn't belong 'cause she's my wife. You think you're better than her 'cause you lean left. I'm here to buy the Paragon V12 she wanted, and we're gonna have a talk about your attitude." Michael swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing as he stepped back slightly. The Paragon V12. He stammered, his voice less steady now. "Of course, sir, we can arrange that. Are you serious about purchasing today? It's a limited edition, not just anyone." John stepped closer, his tall frame towering over Michael despite his age, his eyes narrowing. "Serious as a heart attack. My wife needs that car for her charity work, driving to veterans' homes, organizing fundraisers for folks who've served this country. You refused her 'cause you don't like our politics. That's not just wrong, it's downright foolish." The showroom was now a theater, every ear tuned to the exchange. Ethan, the young salesman, stood near the reception desk, whispering to a colleague, "He's not messing around. Michael's in trouble." A couple near the Porsche exchanged glances, one muttering, "He shouldn't have messed with Kennedy's wife." The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Elizabeth Harper, the dealership owner, emerged from her office at the back, drawn by the growing commotion. In her late 50s, with sleek blonde hair pulled into a tight bun and a navy dress that spoke of understated wealth, she looked anxious as she approached. "Senator Kennedy," she said, her voice measured but tinged with worry. "I'm Elizabeth Harper, the owner." "Is there a problem?" John turned to her, his gaze steady but unyielding. "The problem, ma'am, is your manager here humiliated my wife Rebecca Kennedy for being conservative. He mocked her, refused to sell her the Paragon V12, and kicked her out in front of your customers like she was trash. I'm here to buy that car for her, and I want him to learn something from this." Elizabeth's eyes widened and she glanced at Michael, who was now visibly pale, his hands clenched at his sides. "Senator, I'm deeply sorry," she said, her tone earnest. "This is unacceptable. We'll handle this immediately." Michael tried to interject, his voice shaky. "Sir, I didn't mean to offend. We prioritize clients who align with our values," who John spun back to him, his voice rising, cutting through the showroom like a whip. "Your values. You think kicking out a woman who spends her days helping veterans is noble. Rebecca's been by my side since my first campaign, stood through every fight, every smear from folks like you. And you, a car salesman, think you can judge her worth 'cause she wears an eagle pendant." The crowd was silent now, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. An older woman in a red scarf near the Bentley nodded approvingly, whispering to her companion, "He's right." That was uncalled for. A younger man in a suit near the Ferrari smirked, but his expression faltered under John's piercing gaze. John pointed to the Paragon V12, its obsidian black finish gleaming under the lights. "I'm buying that car today," he said, his voice firm. "Rebecca needs it for her work, for driving to veterans' homes, for showing up to events where she fights for folks who've given everything for this country. You refused her 'cause you don't like me, or what we stand for. That's your mistake, son." Michael's face flushed, his confidence crumbling. "Senator, we can get the paperwork started," he stammered. But John wasn't finished. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous drawl. "Oh, we're not done. I could buy this dealership and have you out of a job by noon, but that's too easy. Instead, you're gonna volunteer at the Veterans Charity Gala Rebecca's hostin' next month. You'll meet the folks you sneered at, see what they're really about." "That's your lesson." Michael's eyes widened, his mouth opening to protest. But Elizabeth jumped in, her voice urgent. "He'll do it, Senator. I'll make sure of it. Ethan, get the paperwork for the Paragon V12. Ethan scurried off, clutching a tablet, while Michael stood frozen, his hands trembling slightly. The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval, others exchanging uneasy glances. John turned to Elizabeth, his tone businesslike. "I want the car delivered to Rebecca by tomorrow. No delays, and make sure it's in perfect condition." Elizabeth nodded rapidly. "Absolutely, Senator. We'll handle everything personally." John reviewed the paperwork. Ethan brought his signature swift and bold across the pages. He handed them back, then fixed Michael with one last look, his eyes cold but not cruel. "You thought you won by kicking her out, Mr. Carter. You thought you put a conservative in her place. You were wrong. Your politics don't make you better than anyone, and you're about to learn that the hard way." He turned, striding toward the glass doors, his shoes clicking steadily on the marble floor. The chime rang as he exited the silver Rolls-Royce, waiting outside like a silent sentinel. The showroom erupted in whispers as John climbed into the Phantom, its engine purring to life before it glided away. Michael stood, rooted, his face ashen, his smug pride shattered in mere minutes. Customers exchanged comments. "He took him apart," one said. "Shouldn't have messed with Kennedy," another added. Ethan, clutching the paperwork, whispered to a colleague, "That was intense. Michael's not going to forget this." Elizabeth approached Michael, her voice low but firm. "You'll be at that gala, Michael. And you'll fix this." Michael nodded weakly, his eyes still fixed on the spot where John had stood. Outside, the crowd dispersed, but the image of the silver Rolls-Royce lingered in their minds, a symbol of a reckoning that had only just begun. Tomorrow, Rebecca would have her Paragon V12, but for Michael Carter, the real challenge lay ahead a month from now at a gala where he'd face the people he'd so arrogantly dismissed. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton in Washington, D.C., shimmered under golden chandeliers, its walls adorned with American flags and conservative banners that fluttered gently in the air-conditioned breeze. The Veterans Charity Gala, hosted by Rebecca Kennedy, pulsed with life. Hundreds of attendees, from grizzled former servicemen to their families and steadfast donors, mingled in a vibrant tapestry of gratitude and pride. Tables overflowed with Southern-inspired dishes, platters of shrimp and grits, pecan pies, and pitchers of sweet tea, while a band strummed a lively rendition of Sweet Home Alabama, its notes weaving through the chatter and laughter. Rebecca, radiant in a navy dress that accentuated her poised frame, stood at the podium, her bald eagle pendant glinting as she spoke with passion about the sacrifices of veterans and the mission to support them. Her voice, warm yet commanding, drew applause from the crowd, who saw in her not just the wife of Senator John Neely Kennedy, but a tireless advocate for those who'd served. The energy in the room was electric, a celebration of community and resilience, a stark contrast to the sterile elitism of Premier Elite Motors, where Rebecca had faced humiliation a month prior. Near the ballroom's entrance, Michael Carter stood out of place in a simple black polo, a volunteer badge pinned awkwardly to his chest. Gone was the tailored navy suit and smug grin that had defined him at the dealership. His face now carried a mix of unease and curiosity, his dark hair slightly mussed from a long evening of tasks. He pushed a wheelchair for Sarah, a 28-year-old veteran who'd lost her left arm in Afghanistan during a roadside bomb incident. Sarah's bright smile and quick wit lit up the space as she directed Michael to the dessert table. "Grab me some of that pecan pie, Michael, and don't skimp on the whipped cream," she teased, her voice carrying a playful authority. Michael nodded, his tone softer than it had ever been in the showroom. "Got it, Sarah. Anything else you need?" His usual arrogance was absent, replaced by a tentative respect that seemed to surprise even him. For weeks, under the pressure of John Neely Kennedy's ultimatum, Michael had been volunteering with veterans groups, and tonight's gala was the culmination of that commitment, a chance to face the people he'd once dismissed as backward conservatives. Rebecca stepped down from the podium, her heels tapping rhythmically on the polished wooden floor, as she navigated through the crowd, shaking hands with veterans and thanking donors. Her green eyes caught Michael from across the room, pushing Sarah's wheelchair with a care that hadn't existed a month ago. She smiled faintly, a mix of amusement and curiosity, and made her way toward them. "Michael?" She called, her voice warm but laced with a subtle edge. "I didn't expect you to actually show up." Michael paused, his face flushing as he met her gaze. "Mrs. Kennedy," he said, his voice low, almost sheepish, "your husband didn't leave me much choice. Said my job might depend on it." Rebecca chuckled, glancing at Sarah, who grinned back. "Thanks for helping out tonight, Sarah," Rebecca said, then turned to Michael, her expression steady. "How's it feel working with these folks? Is it what you thought it'd be?" Michael hesitated, his eyes dropping to the floor before lifting to meet hers. "No," he admitted, his voice quieter now. "I thought this would be all politics, loud banners and posturing. But it's different." Meeting Sarah, hearing her story, she's been through more than I can imagine. "I was wrong about a lot." Sarah chimed in, her tone light but pointed. "He's not bad, Mrs. Kennedy. A bit stiff at first, but he's getting the hang of it. Helped me set up a therapy session last week, even carried my gear to the gym." Michael's face reddened further, but a small smile tugged at his lips. Rebecca crossed her arms, her gaze sharp but not unkind. "You judged me by my pendant, by my husband's politics," she said, her voice steady. "You called me unfit for your showroom, kicked me out because I'm tied to John's conservative stance. But this helping veterans like Sarah, building something real. That's what matters. Not your idea of who belongs." Michael nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I was wrong, Mrs. Kennedy," he said, his voice earnest. "I shouldn't have treated you like that. Working with Sarah, seeing what she's overcome, I misjudged you and a lot of others. I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air, raw and unguarded, a far cry from the smug defiance he'd shown at the dealership. John Neely Kennedy emerged from the crowd, his tall frame cutting through the sea of attendees in a black suit that matched his wife's elegance. His silver hair caught the light, and his blue eyes, though softer now, still carried the sharpness of a man who'd fought his way from small-town Louisiana to the U.S. Senate. He placed a hand on Rebecca's shoulder, his presence grounding her as he looked at Michael. "You showed up," John said, his southern drawl warm but firm. "That's a start. What do you make of this crowd, son?" Michael shifted, glancing at Sarah before answering. "I thought it'd be all flash, Senator. But it's real. Sarah, the others I've met, they're not what I assumed. They're people, not just politics." John nodded, a faint smile crossing his lips. "I started with nothing, Michael. Small-town lawyer scrapping to get by. Learned early that judging folks by their beliefs is a fool's game. You hurt my wife, but you're here trying to make it right. That counts for something." Rebecca smiled, her voice light, but pointed. "The Paragon's perfect, by the way. Delivered right on time, no issues. But next time, Michael, don't let politics blind you to a customer's worth." Michael nodded, his expression sincere. "I won't, Mrs. Kennedy. And Senator, thank you for this chance." John's smirk returned, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Don't thank me yet. My office needs some new vehicles for staff. Keep learning, and maybe you'll handle that deal. But it's up to you to prove you've changed." Sarah laughed, nudging Michael with her good arm. "Better not mess that up, man. I'll be watching." The crowd around them buzzed with energy, the band striking up a new tune as veterans shared stories and donors pledged support. Michael wheeled Sarah back to the dessert table, his demeanor noticeably lighter, even chuckling at her teasing. Rebecca leaned into John, her voice low. "Think he's really changing?" John's arm tightened around her, his drawl soft. "Maybe, darling. But if he doesn't, I'll remind him who he's dealing with. You're my world, and nobody gets to disrespect you." The gala rolled on, laughter and music filling the air, as Michael blended into the scene, no longer an outsider, but a man learning to see beyond labels. The night closed with a powerful truth: respect and action could bridge even the deepest divides, proving that worth lies not in politics but in the choices we make.